Hello there, Keith King here from ancientsymbolist.com. Today I would like to talk about mermaids or mermen and whether they are real or not. Now you may in the next few minutes either conclude that this is a big lie or myth, or you may have the blindfold removed so that your eyes can be opened. My interest in mermaids was first stirred when I was videoing at Buckingham Palace, and there I saw two plaques, one with a mermaid and one with a merman, and I then wondered, what did the kings and queens of England know about mermaids? And then I visited Hampton Court, the palace of Henry VIII, and saw a large painting showing King Charles II with a merman in the scene. The merman is talking via a conch or seashell. And then I watched this short video on YouTube by NightGod333, in which someone shows a dead merman with his hands and legs and fish's tail. It looks extremely real to me. Let's go once more around the body. It appears to be something with fish's gills, and that with these it could live and breathe underwater. It may have been caught in a fisherman's trawling net. At this stage, I wish to thank NightGod333 for allowing me permission to reuse this video. His own site has some of the most fantastic videos you will ever see. Now back to the merman. Maybe we could find out where this merman might have been found and the location for any more of them. I have just come back from Malta, where I went to see the Hypogeum, an underground temple that is said to cure cancer, and which I made a video on some months ago. So here I am, staying at a great hotel in Valletta, the capital of Malta, at a hotel called the Excelsior. And I walked down to the swimming pool, and there are two mermen statues attending to two horses. One is presenting the cornucopia, the vessel with every fruit imaginable to man. The other merman is presenting water to the horse to quench its thirst. The two mermen are only meters apart, and their stories can't be missed by anyone passing by them. Their towers are remarkably similar to the dead merman. And then I go on a walking tour of Valletta, and in the middle of the main square is a magnificent fountain. There in the middle of the fountain, holding up the water container, is three mermen, each in a different pose. They each have a shell between their hands and the water container. Malta is the home of the Knights of St. John. They were known as the Hospitaliers, as they were tasked with helping the sick. They were also Templar Knights, and their patron saint was John the Baptist. In the cathedral dedicated to St. John the Baptist, in Valletta city centre, John is shown baptising Jesus with the clamshell. The clamshell became the symbol for the Knights Templars. St. John the Baptist is also the patron saint of the Freemasons, the organisation whom the Knights Templars amalgamated into. Before the Knights Templars arrived in Malta, it was possessed by the Phoenicians. These were the original masters of the sea. Their ships controlled the Mediterranean. The king of Phoenicia, being extremely rich, supplied the materials to build King Solomon's temple and his palace in Jerusalem. The king of Phoenicia's most trusted architect, Hiram Abiff, designed and built King Solomon's temple. The Phoenicians were also warriors, and their fleet would have been in many battles. One of their ships resides on the seabed just off of Malta. In Valletta is the Grand Master of the Templar Knights' Palace. It is where Malta's Parliament sits. It is a magnificent building in its proportions. The Templar Knights also went to London and set up another of their headquarters. At the entrance to the temple complex in London is an archway, with two mermaids guarding its entrance. So could the Templar Knights have been aware of these mermen? It seems so. Their symbol, the shell, figures predominantly in most of the images of mermen. A perfect example of this is one in Hampton Court. Could this story about mermen and mermaids have been written before now? Over the years, many books have been written about mermaids and mermen that live under the sea, but people have downplayed their existence because there appeared to be no evidence. I first learnt about them from a book entitled The 12th Planet by Zachariah Sitchkin. In it, Zachariah Sitchkin talks about an ancient Sumerian deity who clones various species to work the planet Earth. He shows images of men in fish suits. It was this book that started me on my journey of discovery some 44 years ago. This book explains that space travellers arrived on Earth and started to experiment with the animals that were already here. The two leaders of these space travellers were elevated to become deities, or gods. One god was known as Enki. He was the physician or doctor who performed the cloning operations. He became known as the good god and only wished mankind to flourish and prosper. The other god was called Enlil. What he wanted for mankind was to keep them as servants for his space travellers. These stories about these two deities were written upon ancient texts and walls and were recorded in 3 different languages: Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian. They were only able to be interpreted when the Rosetta Stone was discovered. To check out this story, 40 years ago, I visited the British Museum when the Rosetta Stone was put on display there and brought the book explaining its message. What's always intrigued me is the Genesis story about creation in the Bible. This is because this story is very similar to the Babylonian story on the Rosetta Stone. For those not aware, the Israelites were all taken into captivity and kept within the boundaries of Babylon for 70 years. Before this time, none of their history appears to ever have been written down. The original names given to the deity of the Israelites was El Shaddai, or El Elohim. The El then came into their name, as is Ra-El. The Genesis story brings into play a serpent. The serpent has been the bringer of wisdom to every ancient culture and has become the symbol for medicine. It is displayed upon the shield of the Knight Templar. It is paraded down the street at every Chinese New Year. But the serpent has become demonized by the church. But it is always placed inside the Holy Grail and held by St. John the Evangelist, the other patron saint of Freemasonry. I'm not sure if either of these two deities ever returned to Earth, how we could tell which one was the good guy or not. But back to the cloning stories. We have since cloned Dolly the sheep, and now talk about the ability to clone many aspects of the human genes into our babies now, normally with the stance of eradicating faults we could do without. Since the Genesis story, we have gained the ability to reproduce on our own, thanks to Eve and the serpent. The mermen seem to have their own mermaids, and we could assume this keeps their population expanding. But where do they reside? Where is their underwater home? Is the story about Atlantis true? Malta was originally attached to the mainland of Italy until the waters rose above the land, possibly due to a flood or ice melting. Some civilizations may have been lost to this deluge. If the mermaid stories are no longer classed as myths or legends, then could these stories about lost cities that are under the seas be true, such as the one about Atlantis, a city that is said to have had far advanced knowledge that was lost to mankind? Could it still be there and inhabited by mermaids and mermen? The stone masons who carved these wonderful statues of mermen and mermaids and placed them all over the world so that everyday people may know of their existence. They have played their part in keeping the story alive. The people of Malta who have placed the Merman fountain in front of the magnificent hotel called the Hotel Phoenician have also done their part. The Knights Templars have done what they think is their part by building the City of London School and allowing only the young men associated with the temple and the young men associated with St. James's Palace to originally attend this school. St. James always has the clamshell attached to his shoulder. The City of London School has two merfish entwined around the light pole, and up in the corner of the building is the horse and carriage ready to carry away the enlightened students. The school is now owned by J.P. Morgan, who also owns the nearby building known as Zion Hall. It's probably no coincidence that a merman is placed in the keystone above the door of the building next door, and the Freemasons who built Customs House in Sydney, Australia, have also done their part in placing two merfish around the clock and the royal crown. These merfish both hold the trident, the symbol for Poseidon, the god of the underworld, and is usually shown in his hands, and also when he is in the company of mermen. The subject of mermen has surfaced time and time again. In 1919, the Wellcome Collection acquired a specimen known as the Japanese monkeyfish. In 1982, it was transferred to the Horniman Museum, and then it was placed inside a scanner to determine more about its origins. Later it was put on show in New York. I wonder what they would make of this newly founded merman. On a final note, King Charles II was a Freemason and went to the Freemasons' lodges with Christopher Wren. King Charles was the patron of the first real school in England, known as the Royal Society. He would have been well versed in history. I try to end my stories on positive notes, and so I am going to add another statement. Did the mermen come along at the critical moments and save the men and women who were about to drown? This by hearing their calls for help with the aid of the seashell placed over their ears to hear the vibration of the call. Were they rescued and taken to a better place to live out the rest of their lives under the sea? Well, that is what this scene shows in the King's Palace at Hampton Court. The angel, with its wings, sits inside the clamshell and is there to carry away the poor soul on the back of the horses. If you have enjoyed this video, please press the like button and subscribe. And then please take some time to watch some of my other videos, which are on my website, ancientsymbolist.com.